Welcome, everyone. Would you please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance and remain standing for the invocation?
Heavenly Father, as we start our meeting, bless this council and remind us that we are here to make decisions that affect our city and constituents. Help us make those decisions and bring us together with our differences to come to an agreement that best benefits our community. Bless those in attendance and keep us safe. Amen. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice.
All right, again, welcome, everyone. I'm bringing to order the City of Lee Summit regular session number 40. Can I get a roll call, please?
Councilmember Hodges. Here. Councilmember DeMauro.
Here.
Councilmember Pryor. Here. Councilmember Shields. Here. Mayor Pro Tem Lopez.
Here.
Councilmember Felker. Councilmember Lovell.
Here.
Councilmember Edson.
Here.
Mayor Baird.
Here. All right, first item on the agenda is the approval of the agenda. I have a motion to adopt the agenda by Councilmember DeMauro, seconded by Councilmember Edson. Discussion? Seeing none, please cast your vote. Okay, Councilmember Lovell's an aye. Yay. All votes are in, please record the vote. Passes 8-0. Next is the approval of the consent agenda. We have a motion to adopt by Councilmember Edson and a second by Councilmember Hodges. Discussion? Seeing none, please cast your vote. Are you logged in? You made it? All right. Still need a couple votes, please.
Mayor, I'm an aye. My computer is having issues.
Councilmember Shields is an aye. I'm missing one more. There we go. Thank you. All votes are in. Please record the vote. All right. It passes 8-0. Yeah, we haven't been here for, we don't ever get 2 weeks off in a row, but we did because there were 5 Tuesdays in May. So we enjoyed it. It was nice. Because we've actually, over the last year, had some really long hauls and some long meetings. So it was a nice break. So. Well, in fact, is there any news? That's what's next, is the council roundtable. Anything going on in your district the last few weeks? Items of general interest, discussion? Yes, Councilmember Pryor.
Thank you, Mayor. Okay, so this might sound like I'm accepting an award, but I'm not. I just wanted to say thank you to a lot of people. I wanted to say thank you to all the volunteers that helped with Downtown Days, and thank you to Donnie Rogers for all of the work that he puts in. My husband and I volunteer, and there's a lot of work that goes into it. And Abundant Life, they swept and changed out all the trash the entire weekend. And last but not least, LSPD and LSFD for the oftentimes thankless job that they do, keeping us all safe. So, thank you.
Yes, thank you. Did she steal your thunder? Okay. Councilmember DeMauro?
Thank you, Mayor. You know, we don't mention this very much, but I thought it would be appropriate because you don't hear a lot about it. But today, June 6th, is the 79th anniversary of the D-Day invasion of Normandy, which changed the course of Second World War. So, you know, we still have a few of the veterans alive, although I don't think there's anybody younger than 90. But anyway, I just wanted to honor those that fought and were victorious. D-Day was today, 79 years ago. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. The school district shared some information with Mr. Dunning today. This would be Blue Springs School District, but it is a Lee Summit student. Garrett Fry, 7th grader at Delta Woods Middle School, has officially advanced to the quarterfinals of the Scripps National Spelling Bee in Washington, D.C. So that's very exciting. So let's hope he puts us on the map. And congratulations to his family. All right, any other comments before we head into the public meetings and such, public hearings? All right, seeing none, we're going to go to the public hearings for the evening. We're going to, this is where we're going to do we're going to have a public hearing, and then we're going to enter into the records, the information from the first public hearing. We'll enter into the record that information into the subsequent public hearing. So we'll try to get the bulk of it in the first public hearing. So I'm going to close the regular session and open the public hearing in the matter of agenda item 4A, a preliminary development plan for Arbor Walk West, 3640 Southwest Arbor Ridge Road. Christie Development Associates LLC is the applicant. Would all those wishing to speak to this matter please rise and be sworn in by the city clerk?
Truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
Very good. Does the applicant have a presentation?
Garrett Fugate with representing Christie Development. Does this make it? Okay. So here's a site plan for the give or take 4-acre parcel. On the top, this is a proposed learning experience daycare. There are, I think, 3 or 4 in the Kansas City Metro now. 2 in Overland Park, 1 in Liberty that are open. They're have 400 nationwide. This is on a little over 1.5 acres and has 40 parking spots when 25 are necessary. The lot on the hard corner there is under contract with Casey's general store. Again, about 1.5 acres. Parks 23 and I think 22 are required. And then this third parcel is a proposed conceptual oil change. We don't have a deal done here. And that is about 1 acre, a little under 1 acre. And we have 12 parking spots shown when 5 are required. This is our turning off Mo 150. And then we're extending this median for the turn in here off Arbor Ridge Road. There's a little more detail for the engineering. The traffic routes here. Here are elevations for the learning experience. These are the ones from one of the Overland Park deals, but they'll be almost identical, if not identical. Here are the Casey's elevations. Pretty common with their look. And then again, conceptual, but this is our, what we would envision if we did get an oil change, something brick, masonry, and, obviously high class look there. So, questions?
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. No, what we'll do is we'll do the staff's presentation, and then we'll ask questions of both of you at that point. Yep.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Good evening, Council, Mr. Mayor, Shannon McGuire, Staff Planner. Please enter into the record Exhibit A, list of Exhibits 1 through 21.
Please enter into the record Exhibit A 1 through 21.
All right, so there's no new information from the Planning Commission hearing, so I'll keep my presentation brief and I'll answer any questions you may have. But as the applicant stated, the project is located on the corner of 150 and Southwest Arbor Ridge Drive, right here. It is currently undeveloped. It's about a 4-acre property. North and west of the property is the Holy Spirit Catholic Church. South across 150 is Journey Church campus and it's zoned ag, and then east is PMIC zoned and it's vacant as well. They are proposing 3 different uses: a gas station, a quick oil change center, and the learning experience daycare. Access to the daycare will be through a shared drive right here. And then access to the other 2 sites will be along that shared drive as well as along 150. Daycare center is about 10,000 square feet, with the oil change facility about 1,800 square feet, and then the gas station's a little over 4,500 square feet. The learning experience elevations are typical to elevations that we see throughout the community. It includes stucco, brick, and glass for materials. Like I said, they are compatible with the design and construction of other buildings we have in the community. The elevations and materials associated with Casey's are going to be brick, stone, and glass. And then the proposed materials for the oil change center include EFIS, brick, glass, and some cast stone. The Ignite comprehensive plan identifies this area as commercial. The proposed uses are uses allowed in that zone, as well as the existing PMIX zoning that the property has currently. The M150 corridor does establish minimum sustainability requirements for that area, and to meet those sustainability requirements, they are proposing energy-efficient materials, materials that are produced from renewable resources, as well as xeriscape and water-conserving landscaping materials. The original site plan presented originally at Planning Commission was altered slightly, then brought back for the Planning Commission. You can see the changes here is shifting the driveway from the north to the south here, and then shifting this a little bit. There are 2 conditions of approval for this particular project. The first condition basically is saying that, hey, we'll do the development in accordance with the plans that we've submitted. And then the second condition is going to be ensuring that the development is developed with in accordance with the transportation impact analysis that was provided. With that, that concludes staff's presentation. I can answer any questions you may have.
All right. Thank you. Questions for staff or applicant? Councilmember Pryor.
Thank you, Mayor. So the Valvoline, is it like it's still in the works possibly? Well, okay, so the reason I'm asking is because I feel like this is such a major corner, and with Firestone being both places, personally, I would just like to see something other than an oil changing place on such a major corner, like a nice, I don't know, something that's gonna add to the value of the homes down there. But what, if not a Valvoline, what are you considering, or where are you, and why is that one up in the air still?
We just don't have any commitments for a tenant to go there, whether we sell it or do a build-to-suit or ground lease. So it could, we we'll have to come back through city council if we get a coffee shop or someone else who shows interest. That's just when we were, it was more for marketing material than anything to make it an oil change next to a gas station. It doesn't mean that's what we're going to go with. But it, when we did our impact study, we wanted to get some traffic numbers for that use, and then we'll obviously go from there if something changes. But yeah, that one is. The other 2 are committed. That one is there is no commitment. We just use Valvoline because it's a national brand.
Okay, and yeah, I think the daycare and Casey's, I like both those. I just would like to see something different go into the Valvoline, but I was just wondering where you were in that process. All right, thank you.
Yep.
All right, thank you. Councilmember DeMoro.
Thank you, Mayor. The access road, the church's access road, what kind of buffer is going to be between that and the development? I didn't see anything in the packet.
Yeah, so I don't know the number of feet, but they do have a row of landscape trees that we're obviously south of. So I don't know, I don't remember or know off the top of my head, but.
But I mean, the trees are well cropped up, so I mean, it would still leave open space. And I guess my question is there going to be anything on the development side, development property, that would buffer that road from the development?
I don't know if I know the answer to that.
Okay. Okay. All right, thank you.
Okay. You want to point out where the location is again, Mr. McGuire? So point out it on the screen where Councilmember DeMoro is talking about.
So it's gonna be in this area right here.
Right. And those trees are pretty tall, and I just wonder if there's going to be anything closer to the ground.
So from a planning standpoint, since it's a PMIX zone to PMIX zone, there's no required landscaping buffer there. The applicant could always add more if they so choose to.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
All right, thank you. Councilmember Shields.
Thank you, Mayor. How far is the daycare from, like, from the gas station, from the oil change building? I'm just wondering, is there a recommended safe distance for kids to be in vicinity to fumes and things like that?
Yeah, so I don't know about fumes. Obviously, with sale of alcohol, there's a requirement, and it's, I want to say somewhere around 250 feet from door to door, and then we put the playground on the opposite side. So on the west side of the building, so there's a building buffer in there as well. So on the 4 acres, from gas pump to playground is as far away as we could possibly put it, and that was by design.
Is that something staff can speak to at all? Was that something that was considered when this application was reviewed, or?
I don't have that number, but I can get it for you.
Okay, I'd appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Pryor.
Thank you. So I know we've heard a lot about the stormwater on this corner. And I know that they were more specifically talking about the potential multifamily that's going to go in here. But is there a plan for stormwater on this corner, or is it a concern at all with these buildings added?
No, I don't, not that I know. I know we're coming across from the south side of 150 and then coming across here and then up this side of the property line. We're extending this pipe here, this storm sewer over. But I don't think there was any, I think there was detention above, and then we're going to use that below detention for that, to go under 150 there.
Where will it drain to?
Where we'll drain to.
Would you like to answer?
No, I'm just grabbing something.
Dave Christie, Christie Development. You see the stormwater pipe goes underneath the road. That'll go into the existing, that drains there now. And that will continue to drain. When we did the deal with Scenic Development for the Raintree CCRC that they're doing detention, I've got water coming off their site, going down the side of Casey's, and then it's gonna go under 150 Highway. And then the easement that he was showing you, that's a sanitary sewer extension that we're gonna be running along 150 and then taking it north to the TLE. So we've done stormwater studies and control and so on. This doesn't seem to be as big a concern or controversial as potentially the other side over on Ward. So, but Olson did the drain water study, provided it to the staff, and everybody seems to be fine with it.
Okay, so will it drain into Raintree Lake eventually, or will it not? It won't?
Not to my knowledge, no.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Is there a way we can find out if it will? Just because that is, there
Mr.
a way we
McGuire, can you come talk to us about where this gravitate, or have Mr. Thorne here? Drag him into it. Mr. Park, they're all looking at each other. Oh, Mr. Elam's gonna step up. The top of the department.
Ryan Elam, Assistant City Manager. Give me just 1 second. I'm going to pull up an aerial map to kind of show the whole area and potentially the drainage basins associated with that. That could potentially give some context. That was a bad noise. So on the screen here, you can see this is the location of the church. This is Journey Church on the other side. This is the location of the project here where you can see the cursor. I believe the storm pipe that they are connecting into is it this pipe here that goes across the road here? Ultimately, this stormwater appears that it will eventually make its way down to Raintree Lake. As you can see, everything in about everything from this ridge line here, as you can kind of see that where I'm drawing my cursor there, eventually does flow into Raintree Lake, eventually after going through a large public storm sewer system.
What does that mean for the residents of Raintree Lake? Will it?
I believe their storm sewer, their stormwater, and the engineer, I don't know if the engineer is here or not that can discuss that, but they're required to meet our standard storm sewer requirements, standard stormwater requirements, provide erosion control, and ensure that they are accounting for their increase in runoff through comprehensive control of the detention of the increase in runoff.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you. Mr. McGuire, were you going to provide info?
273.4 feet between the nearest pump to the playground.
Thank you.
Okay, I just want to, just for clarity, you've got right in, right out to the potential oil change center. And then you got a medium on the road, so there's no left turning in there, correct?
Correct.
And then usually the staff have issues with the distance from 150 highway on the road there. What road is that? What's it called? Arbor Ridge. So you got enough distance between there. That's why the road curves up to the north a little bit to make sure there's enough distance there for traffic in case it backs up a little bit. Is that why the design is that way?
Yes, so originally we had more of a straight, kind of a right turn off of Arbor Ridge.
Yep.
And the issue was the distance between, like you said, 150 here and the turn-in lane for stacking. So that's why we're extending this median here and then turning it in a little bit higher up.
Yep, you redesigned it.
Correct.
Mr. Park, how much is it usually? How many feet do you look for?
Michael Park, Director of Public Works. Well, this actually has a little extended distance because what hasn't been mentioned tonight is one of their development conditions is to install a traffic signal at that intersection on 150 highway. So when you control an intersection in that manner, you need extended distance for cars to stack or queue between those signal cycles. This being a collector roadway, it has a shorter separation, but it's really that signal that's controlling the distance. So what they've done is try to maximize the separation of access from 150 and then from the church driveway.
Okay, so that was my next question is when does this trigger a traffic signal? So obviously this activity does that. So that would be installed as well. So would there be, let me look at the road real quick. So there'd be, if that's the case, would there be a left turn lane then? Park?
Left
Oh,
turn.
there already is a left turn lane there.
Yeah, there's left turn lanes on
Yeah, it's
150
already-
highway as
it's
well
already-
as the
Okay.
collector.
All right. That's the biggest thing because it's a gas station. You got a lot of people coming in and out, right? C-stores. Any other questions before I move on to the public? All right. Is there anyone here that would like to speak in favor or in opposition to the application? Please come forward. All right. Are there any additional questions from council?
Mayor,
All right. Yes.
before you, before you close the public hearing, I did want to mention, while this is a PDP on the development side, I recall this area coming through, and I certainly don't want to speak for the developer, but it was a conceptual incentive request for a community improvement district, so.
CID for the,
Yes.
for the C-store.
So I just wanted to mention that. It doesn't,
Right.
that's the financial side, but
Yep.
wanted to mention that as this is coming
Well, there
forward.
could be
this evening.
tax dollars on that oil change too. Do they charge sales tax as well? Mr. Elam?
Sales tax on the fuel sales?
On the oil change?
I believe the oil itself.
On the parts
on
and
the
such, yeah,
parts.
yeah.
Yeah, it'd be the parts.
Yep. Okay.
So, Mayor, if I may, I need to make one clarifying remark
Yeah.
regarding the stormwater
Sure.
through there. Again, I apologize not being 100% familiar with the intricacies of this project. This area was reviewed with two separate stormwater studies, and when the Raintree Village, when that project came through, as well as the project to the north. And that study actually showed that because they're detaining to the north and to the east here on those two projects, that it would not be advantageous to detain on this site itself. So I mentioned before that they would have to detain their site. It's actually, they're not required to detain on this site because it gets a little bit more technical on that, but due to the size of the site and the fact that there's two adjacent basins just outside of this area, that stormwater flow, if you were to hold it all, would cause that all to line up and increase flows downstream. So the theory on this is that it gets out of the way first before the rest of the storm comes through when you look at the area on a bigger picture basis. So I just wanted to make that clarification because I had mentioned that they would meet they did meet the stormwater study requirements through that alternative way.
Very good. It's all about timing.
Yes.
All right. Does the applicant care to make any further comment? All right, thank you. Hearing no further testimony, I'm closing the public hearing and reopening the regular session. Is there any council discussion on this application? All right, I'm not seeing any. So we will go to Councilmember Edson, please. Would you read bill number 23-105 for me?
Thank you, Mayor. Move to advance to second reading, Bill number 23-105, an ordinance approving a preliminary development plan on land located at 3640 Southwest Arbor Ridge Road in District PMIX, all in accordance with the provisions of Unified Development Ordinance Chapter 33 of the Code of Ordinances for the City of Lee Summit, Missouri.
All right, thank you. We have a motion to move to second reading, Bill number 23-105 by Councilmember Edson, seconded by Councilmember Hodges. Discussion? Seeing none, please cast your vote. All votes are in. Please record the vote. Passes 7-1. All right, thank you. All right, we're going to go to a bunch of public hearings right in a row to talk about one application in particular with numerous moving parts. Therefore, I'm going to close the regular session and open the public hearing. First public hearing, that is, in the matter of agenda item 4B, a rezoning from CP2 to CS to PMIX and a preliminary development plan. Colburn Road Investments, it's a conceptual site plan, 900 Northeast Colburn Road, Engineering Solutions LLC is applicant. Would all those wishing to speak to this matter please rise and be sworn in by the city clerk?
Tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
All right, Mr. Schlicht.
Matt Slish, Engineering Solutions, 50 Southeast 30th Street, Lee Summit, Missouri. And this is the beginning of kind of a long run for you here on a number of public hearings. So we have a whole slew of people up here to help me with questions as they come along. So the beginning is talking about the overall project. Northeast corner of Rice Road and Colburn Road. The C-store facilities come through, design plans are underway, and that was kind of the kickoff to this. Now what we're ready to talk about is kind of the rest of it. Generally 37 acres, setting up there kind of bounded on the south by what used to be Paradise Park, Lakeland Community. Kind of on the north side, you got the post office, the storage facility, the fire station, kind of up in that area. Bounded on the north by the hopefully soon to be developed PRI ground that we're all kind of waiting on. So this is the first piece that kind of starts the infrastructure and the process as we work through to that one. The site currently has a mixture of zoning, CS and CP2, which get tricky as we start to try to figure out uses and kind of work through everything. So we've decided that the best approach would be to bring forward a PMIX zoning district, which allows us an opportunity to bring in a mixture of uses. We have some residential uses, we have some commercial uses, we have some retail uses, as you guys have already seen with the C-store. We're asking for no changes from the zoning setbacks, no zoning, no densities, no differences. It's basically the same process as it would be with a CP2 or a CS. It just allows us the flexibility as we continue to develop this project, as this is a conceptual plan, to figure out what those end users are going to be. We have an idea of where we want to head and what we think is going to happen. And later on today, you'll see kind of that first one that we're sure of. The comp plan shows that area is all kind of a commercial use. Again, you'll start to see the road network in the area to the north going into the PRI ground. So this again is kind of that beginning of that process as we start to head north into that ground. So the concept plan essentially shows, if we kind of start on that southwest side, the C-store, which you guys have seen, and then some type of a warehouse office building to the north that is complementary to the post office and the Marvel store that exists up there. Something on the southwest corner that's in an office type use, believing it's probably some kind of a medical office, but leaving up to some kind of an office use. The senior facility is our next companion case that we'll bring forward and have a lot of detail and information about. These guys will bring a lot of information of what that facility will be, so I'll leave that one to come. The blue to the east of that is kind of the residential area, where we have a mixture of townhomes and apartment type uses. And then on the southerly side is some type of, again, office. We believe is going to be some type of a medical office type use, but again, 10, 12,000 square foot type buildings that can stand alone and be used for the area around. The common area in the middle is the existing ponds that have been sitting out there for a long time. And that area is intended to be improved and upgraded to become more of an amenity for the site, especially for the senior facility to have some walking trails or uses of that area to make it, again, more of an amenity for the overall. So some of the elevation views, the Heartland Market you guys have seen, this one's approved and the design plans are underway. The senior facility, I'm giving you a glimpse of what we'll soon show you on the rest of the facility. The townhomes are something similar to what we've seen up in Chapel Ridge that we've done. The apartment buildings, again, this is similar to what we've seen up there in the Chapel Ridge area, thinking that kind of that continuation of that multi-story, 3-story apartment building is an option for that area. And then the medical office building is something complementary to the area. Again, 10 to 12,000 square foot users is expectation. We did hold a neighborhood meeting for this project as well as the senior facility project. We had no one show up and have heard nothing from comments from anybody through the process. So we'll stay in for questions.
All right, thank you.
Shannon McGuire, staff planner. Please enter the record Exhibit A, listed exhibits 1 through 19.
Please enter into the record Exhibit A 1 through 19.
Get my slideshow going, right? All right, so the applicant did a pretty good job of kind of giving a broad overview, so I'll try not to be too redundant. Just to gain some bearings here, we are at Colburn and Rice Road. North is that PRI property. South, or we got the new library right here as well. So the property is about little under 37 acres. The current zoning is CS and CP2, and they are proposing a rezone to that PMIX use. Post office here, as well as the granite store over here. Again, they are rezoning from that CP2 and CS to that PMIX, and they are presenting a conceptual plan. Just to kind of put a note on that conceptual plan, this subject application is limited to the proposed rezoning only, as well as the conceptual plan. A companion application, as they have stated, for the senior living is on this agenda and has been applied for and will be presented shortly as well. The conceptual layout is similar to what the applicant has already showed you here with the various uses with senior living, some multifamily, some higher density residential, office use along the bottom, the C-store, office, and then the lot here. Potential uses are the senior living, the medical office, office space, commercial pad site, and some multifamily. Conceptual development plan is not intended to replace the PDP, so any additional development of this subject site will require separate applications and come back before this body before approval. The proposed uses are compatible with the surrounding area. The Ignite comprehensive plan does identify this area as commercial. And should the rezoning be approved, the conceptual land uses would be allowed in that rezoning, the PMIC zoning district. So with this particular project, there are 4 standard conditions or site-specific conditions of approval. So the first one speaks to that no development will be approved or allowed without coming back for your approval of a PDP. And then the condition number 2, 3, and 4 deal with the road improvements. So with that, I can stand for any questions that you may have.
All right, thank you. Councilmember Pryor?
Thank you, Mayor. Sorry, I feel like I have a lot of questions tonight, but, so I know this is the vote for rezoning, but just in general, will this, as it develops, will it affect, I know the Paradise Park, the school district's going to be using it this next school year, that traffic in there, what are the plans for the traffic right there on Colburn? Because it's already hard to get in and out of there.
Good afternoon, good evening, Michael Park, Director of Public Works. So some of the traffic impacts that are associated with Colburn Road were approved as conditions of the aforementioned C-store development that was approved. This development, the conceptual and rezoning, has a few additional improvements. Those are related to Ball Drive and the intersection. There's some signal modifications and additional turn lanes required. But neither of those requirements would impact the former Paradise Park property and its access. Additional PDPs that may come forward could have other requirements, but at this time, the C-store requirements and those that are before you this evening don't change its particular access. It does affect other access along the corridor. Some of those full access move to limited access, but typically those properties have more than one driveway, and they're kind of swapping a current right-in, right-out for full access and a full access for a right-in, right-out. That's probably the easiest way I can explain it.
And then will any of this future development, will it affect Truck 2 being able to get in and out of Station 2?
For fire service, no. The improvements on Colburn Road, those also over by existing Rice Road were reviewed and conditioned on the C-store preliminary development plan that previously came to council for approval. There will be restricted access at that existing Rice Road, but it will be designed in a manner that's traversable for emergency service vehicles.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you. I'm sorry, Mr. Park, you want to come back up? So you're saying Ball, you got a left-hand turn lane that's going to go onto Ball. You're calling the new street that aligns with Ball?
Correct.
Okay, I'm just making sure.
Yeah, it would align with existing Ball Drive.
Okay, so that's the left-hand turn lane going east, going into there.
Correct, and they are also on this particular drawing showing, I think, some of the public improvements associated with other agenda matters this evening, like right turn lanes. All of those other conditions are also on other and future PDPs. So some may be listed as part of this application, some may be associated with other applications on this entire site in the concept plan.
Okay, so would you just show us the corridor, Colburn corridor, and show us like where stoplights will be?
So,
Because we already had the redesign of back at Rice Road, right?
correct.
Can you just kind of just?
Let me just kind of go over the
basically-
entire
yeah,
picture
yeah.
because
That's what we
you're,
need.
you're seeing a concept plan for parts of which have already been approved.
Right.
And other parts which are coming forward. And this really does show the entirety, even though I can't see really just what's south of Colburn Road, but you can see the picture here. So through median, this current full access of existing Rice Road, which actually not too much further here, there's a signal.
Right.
With access to 291. Will be extended so that there's just a westbound left movement maintaining access, but no eastbound left. EMS services can make their movements, that's fine. Then you continue, where did my cursor, there it is. They're gonna continue to build a raised median here to limit the driveways in this area, but they will have access off of Rice Road. Again, we're maintaining access. Then building a new Rice, we're calling it something else. I've always referred to as relocated Rice Road. It's serving in that function in this area with a traffic signal, full access and turn lanes on Colburn Road between the C-store and the library. The median then will continue. So existing, there's a median there. It's right in, right out, will become full access. There's a church right on the south side of Colburn Road in this area with two driveways, the right in, right out, and then they have full access just to the east and south of the library. It will then be limited by a median. The blue line here is median. Then that median terminates in this general areas where the former Paradise Park was. So you can see their driveways and access is not changing. Then you get to Ball Drive, another traffic signal.
Okay, so how do you access the library is what I want to know.
Library will be accessed from, they can retain their
Right in, right
right in,
out.
right out here.
Okay.
As their development came forward years ago, they also anticipated with their site layout full access from the new roadway that extends north with traffic signal access at Colburn. So right in this area,
That's where they're going to end up.
This is-
That's where we'll end up accessing it later on.
this
when
is where they
done.
intended to have their full
Okay.
access.
Right, because right now, they're just accessing, they have full access from Colburn. We're going to make that a right in, right out,
Correct.
and then we will access it from, I guess, what's the name of that road going to be, do we know? Well, Rice is further to the west, so it's not Ball.
Lucky. Thank you. The developers named it Lucky.
Nice.
So,
Lucky Street is going to be how you access the,
right in this general area, right. Right now, there's only the one, access down.
you can access it from Rice Road as well, but you could go around, but okay, I got you.
Yes.
All right, that makes sense. Because right now, that's what we're trying to do, is make this whole area safer.
We're trying to manage access in a much
Yeah.
better way to reduce
I
congestion.
like what we
and make it
did
safer.
before, what we approved before, but I just want to make sure that we don't mess that up.
You're
going
correct, sir.
forward. So, all right. All right. That would take us to, is there anyone that would like to speak in favor or in opposition to the application? This might be the time, I think we have had someone fill out a public comment card. Mr. Roberts, are you here?
Right here.
Yeah.
He is a hard hearing, so he's had difficulty hearing the
Can you come up with them maybe and help us? Make sure we know what the concerns are. Did you get sworn in whenever we did the swearing in?
We did not. We
Can
didn't
you
stand.
just can you let her swear you in real quick, Mr. Roberts?
Where is it here?
Yeah,
What?
right here. Her. Stand still. Stand still. It's okay.
Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
So this is Mr. Floyd Roberts.
Yes.
And what's your name? Can I ask your name?
My name is Carla McCauley. I'm his daughter.
Okay, thank you.
We currently reside in this white square on your board to the right.
Yep.
Of everything. It's a rectangle outlined. I'm sorry, there's,
Yep.
yes, right there. That's his residence. And regarding a hearing before, they had said no one had come up. We had gotten a certified letter in the mail. The backing that you're supposed to sign was ripped off. He never signed anything. and we received it after the hearing had already happened.
Okay, that's fine.
So, we came today.
Whoops, what I hit?
Uh-oh. He touched.
Mr. McGuire,
I'm
would you help him
sorry.
out, please?
I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
I can't touch. Anyway,
Where is it? I'm right here in the corner?
yes, you're right there.
No, that's not me.
Yes, Dad, that's you. I'm sorry.
It's okay. Would you, what's your name again?
My name's Carla McCauley. I'm
Carla,
sorry.
would you
Yes.
use the mouse and point to his property so he can tell you which way he would like you to move it?
Right here, Dad. This-
I have 2 acres right there in the bottom corner, right next to the church.
Right.
And what I was wondering, how is that gonna affect me? I'm zoned commercial right now.
I believe, let me get staff up here, but based on the map, you're still zoned commercial. Is that correct,
I'll
Mr.?
still be commercial?
Yes.
That's what I was wondering.
You will still be
I have 2
commercial.
acres, except for a few years ago, when they built the road through there, they took 10 feet off the frontage. So I'm a little less than 2 acres.
Okay.
And I'm right next to to the church there. on the
Yeah,
corner.
would you, Mr. McGuire, would you pull up the zoning map and show him that he'll still be commercial on there? There's a red map. So on there, you see where it says 1150?
Right here, Dad.
That's you? And it's red, meaning you're still zoned commercial.
I'm 1150, yeah.
Yep.
I'll still be commercial.
Yes.
That's what I was wondering, how it was gonna affect me.
You will still,
Well, you'll be affected, Dad.
you'll still be
They'll have
commercial.
everybody around, but yes. Anyway, did you want to say anything else?
No, I don't guess so.
Okay.
I was just wondering if that was gonna change my zoning.
No, you're gonna stay commercial.
I'll still go commercial, okay.
Thank you.
But you're
Thank you.
living in it residential.
Thank you, and I'm sorry.
Yeah,
No, you're
Well,
fine.
I'm sorry I have troubles, but okay, thank you.
been there since '77, so that's why.
Yeah, he's seeing a lot of change go on.
Yes, we have.
All right, well, thank you for coming.
Thank you.
All right, is there anybody else that would like to come forward and speak? All right. Any additional questions from council? All right, does the applicant care to make any further comment? All right. Hearing no further testimony, I'm closing the public hearing and reopening the regular session. Is there any council discussion on this application? We're going to have lots of chance to talk about some other stuff on it, but at this point, we are looking at the preliminary development plan, changing into PMIX. All right, I'm not seeing any further discussion. So what we're going to do is, Mr. Head, or Mr. Dunning, I'm going to close this and then open another one. We are going to enter into the record, once I do that, the testimony that we just heard from the first public hearing, and we'll enter that into each of these. But they will add additional information as it's applicable to the public hearing that they're talking about. So we'll just keep building our public record is what we're going to do. And then when we get done, we will we'll look at the bill and vote on that. So at this point, closing the public hearing on the agenda item 4B, which is the PMIX and preliminary development plan, reopening the regular session. Now I'm going to close the regular session and open the public hearing in the matter of agenda item 4C, which is a preliminary development plan, senior living facility, 900 Northeast Colburn Road, Engineering Solutions LLC as applicant. Would all those wishing to speak to this matter please rise and be sworn in by the city clerk?
You swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
All right, Mr. Schlish.
All righty, good evening. Continuing on, Matt Slish, Engineering Solutions, 50 Southeast 30th Street, Lee Summit, Missouri. So now we're moving on to the senior facility, and we'll have Andrew, the architect, come up here in a little bit and kind of walk you through an animated version of the building to give a better perspective. A lot of the same information, but generally this takes care of about 17 acres of the 37 acres that we had just walked through on the PMIX zoning. So a lot of similar slides on that side of it in the comp plan conversations. The main thing is just to start talking through the building, the area, and the uses. And so what this chart kind of gives you is there's 3 distinct differences of uses in the facility. There's a memory care facility, independent living, and assisted living. And so in the breakdown of what you'll see is there's a phase 1 and a phase 2 breakdown. And what we'll give you on each side of it is there's 32 memory care units. Independent living in the phase 1 side of it is there's 10 2-bedroom, 20 1-bedroom. So you can see there's a mixture of uses, sizes, trying to accommodate all potential guests. Assisted living, again, there's some 2 bedrooms, 1 bedrooms, and some studio units of a couple different sizes on that side of it. So ultimately, then in phase 2, there's a add of some independent living on that side of it. There is an inside garage or a covered garage parking space underneath one of the wings. There's outside surface parking for the remainder of the residents or visitors as they come through the facility. Generally speaking, Andrew will talk more of this. The memory care is on the south side with a corridor of common uses kind of through the middle, and then the assisted living and the independent living being on the wings on either side of it. Again, looking at some elevation views as we go through the facility, and I'll kind of flip through these quickly. And we have an animated version that Andrew can walk through, but you'll start to see the character, color, and materials of the facility as we're planning to have. Again, we did have a neighborhood meeting. No one was at that same neighborhood meeting we had on that piece. Now let me find. Say that I'm not seeing the video on that one. Give me a second. Do it down below still. Andrew, you want to come up and do that one? I'll give you this.
Just pause it for 1 second. Introduce myself. I'm Andrew Alden from AG Architecture in Wauwatosa, Wisconsin. Pleasure to be here tonight. I get to talk to you about the building, which I'm really excited about, so I'll try to maintain my composure. I have a passion for senior living, and sometimes it comes out with me talking really fast. And also tonight we have Claire Hahnemann from Ecumen Senior Living. They're going to be the operator of the community and planning. There was a couple specific operations questions, so we thought it was appropriate to bring Claire here so she could answer any operations questions there might be. Okay, so let's get into it. This is the fancy intro. So I'm going to pause it occasionally, just to totally break the spirit of it, but this is approaching from the east side. You can see the 3-story assisted living building here. This is phase 1, pretty much from this line south. Phase 2 is the independent living. It's a 4-story with the parking garage underneath, and we're going to slide around the side of it. This is a large building, so we did a couple things to try to make it appear smaller by breaking it up as far as a 1-story, 3-story, and 4-story. Sort of as you go south, it gets a little taller, so you get good natural light into those courtyard spaces. And we also tried to use some familiar residential shapes. You'll see dormers, very familiar exterior materials. Think of it like a contemporary agrarian style. You can see our 3-story assisted living sits 1 level lower than the rest of the building. Going around the north side, the balconies help break up that space, as well as some details on the buildings. There's our phase 2 entry into the independent living. Now we quickly just flipped all the way over to the west side. So let me pause it here for a second. So if you're standing on the west side, off to your right here is a 1-story memory care. This is the 3-story independent living. On the first floor is a lot of common spaces. And then to the left is the 4-story independent, that's phase 2. So it sort of gets taller as you go north. We're going to keep flipping around here. That's our main entry, covered porte cochere. Always thinking about walkability of these places, always thinking about access for staff, residents, and family. This building right here, this is the 1-story dining, and it's specifically dining, single story, so you get natural light over it into the courtyard that you're going to see in a second that has some nice outdoor dining features and grilling and such. And there's our 3-story assisted living off to the right, set just a little lower to try to break down the size of this building. Now, once again, we're on the east side facing the pond. You can see everybody out enjoying the morning sun with their pets. Take a little walk. Notice the differentiation in the facade, the different planes and materials to help break up that scale. Now we're into that wonderful interior court. And I would like specifically to point out Deckzilla in the background. This is one of my favorite features in the building. 3 stories, exterior space access. We're all about blurring that line between the interior and exterior, give people options to get outside and enjoy themselves. See that rising sun. This courtyard will be developed with all kinds of amenities. We have a fire pit in here at the moment, but it will have other items too. Therapeutic flower gardens, planting beds, maybe even a pickleball court if we can fit it. Here's an outdoor dining area, outdoor grilling. There's that single-story piece I mentioned before, and then once again, Deckzilla. Love Deckzilla. Good quality materials. Going to do a very dramatic pool back here. Masonry, asphalt shingles, metal roof, fiber cement siding, horizontal and vertical. Once again, linking back to all those farmhouses in the community. And as a little Easter egg, when you get a chance, if everything goes well, to come to the grand opening, I suggest going to the 2nd floor and going into the Zebra Hitch Lounge and having a drink. And the Zebra Hitch Lounge is a reflection back to the former occupant of the site, what was it, DB Rice Sausage, I believe, whose mascot was zebras. And I'm sure somebody in this room might remember the zebra hitch from the county fairs, maybe? Anybody? Anybody? No?
Mr. Dunning, do you remember this?
RB Rice, there you go. Come check out the Zebra Hitch Lounge. And we are available to answer any questions. Claire, would you like to talk a little bit about operations real fast? Because this came up in planning.
Good evening. Claire Hahnemann with Ecumen. We are a nonprofit, 160-year-old nonprofit based out of Minneapolis. We have, over our history, provided services to those most in need of housing in our communities. We started out providing housing to orphans and widows after the Civil War, and now our mission is completely senior-based. We provide all levels of care: independent, assisted living, memory care, skilled nursing, home care, and hospice. This property we're very excited about. It's going to have the full spectrum of independent living, assisted living, and memory care. We are very excited to be here in Missouri and provide care to all of the residents here. We think there's a great demand, and we're really excited to partner with Nelson Development to create the building that your community deserves.
All right, thank you. All right, looks like we're going to do staff's presentation.
All right, please enter in the record Exhibit A, list of exhibits 1 through 18.
Exhibit A 1 through 18 are entered into the record.
I will preface my presentation with my budget's a little lower than theirs, so I don't have a fancy fly-through. Again,
we're going to keep it that way probably too, so just so you know.
Again, just to orientate you to the site here, we got the post office, Rice Road and Colburn. This is the area we've already previously spoke with. North is ag and the PRI property, and it's surrounded by a CP2. Again, they are proposing the senior living is existing CP2 CS zoning. With the previous application, they are proposing that PMIX. Comprehensive plan is commercial. This particular project is limited to the senior living facility. So any additional development in the area will require a new PDP by separate application. The proposed materials include brick, fiber cement panels, lap siding, some Nichihara panels, asphalt shingles, and is very compatible with materials and design features that we find throughout the community as well. The comprehensive plan does identify the future land use area as commercial. As part of the comprehensive plan, the city has committed to meet the goals of the Mid-America Regional Council's Community for All Ages. The proposed plan does meet those goals by providing a varied housing type for our residents as they age through, with the 3 different types of care options there. So this particular project does have three conditions of approval. Again, condition one is just saying that the development will be in accordance with the plans that were submitted. And then condition two is the development shall be in accordance with the traffic impact analysis. And then that condition three ties the approval of this particular project to the previous approval, or approval of the previous application that you've previously seen with the conceptual and rezoning. So with that, I can answer any questions you may have.
Okay. Before we start, can I, maybe I just got it turned around, but I feel like the east side, which would be to the right, I feel like, has that changed? Has it been updated or something? Because there was an angle on that building. No? Like in the video. Mr. Slish, is there an angle there in that parking lot?
There's not an angle. I think that it could have just been as we came around one of those views.
okay.
There have been a few slight changes to the, a few smaller details to this, but the general shape of it is exactly the same. It's kind of, it'll have the wings with the central corridor and then the
Okay,
wings with the American side, yeah.
I think, okay. So
It
like,
could have been an angle on that.
can you go to the conceptual, okay, that we did earlier? That's where I got confused.
Oh.
The one we did earlier tonight,
Yes, you could have on that one.
it was just a different design. Maybe that was earlier. I was just, like, see that
Oh,
right
yeah, there
there?
it is. So that's what you're looking at, is that
Yeah.
one.
Speak to that if you like.
Yeah, please.
And-
I'd like to know what's going on there,
So-
because that's a lot more going on there than what you have going on here.
So the original layout that we did here, when we started to look specifically at what the experience inside the building was like for residents, staff, and family, we're very concerned with travel distances, on how long and how far it is to get to dining and the major activity spaces. And that particular design, the outside wings at the end of the trident, it was really far out there. So we started thinking that's just too far for an elder to walk. We have a wellness program. We want people to walk, but within reason. So we usually provide like 150 to 200 feet before you can stop and rest and then walk a little bit more. But those outside wings were just way too far. So we reconfigured it to do two things. One, to reduce the travel distance down to the major spaces, and also to try to reduce the overall footprint of the building. And so that's what that.
Well, it does
that
create
tried to
more
do.
courtyards, that's for
Yes,
sure.
yes.
It creates a lot bigger courtyard. Okay.
Good eye.
I had to impress the developer and make sure they know that I'm watching every step that they make. So, okay, so with that, I'll turn it over to council for questions. Councilmember Pryor.
Thank you, Mayor. For one, can I move in here? Because it's really nice. But two, I was just wondering what kind of strain this would add to LSFD, the senior facility, if any, and if it's something that your current stations can handle.
Good evening, Mike Snyder, Fire Chief. This is something we've talked about several times, and in the past, I've always said single developments like this typically don't overburden our system. We're typically seeing anywhere between 50 to 300 calls, depending on the type of facility when they're in our community. The issue is, as we continue to grow many more, obviously the demands multiply. So that's what we have to have complete awareness with. In regards to that, there is currently 2 within that district. This would be adding that third facility within that area in an already high demand operation there. As a system, I believe that we can continue to bring in as a district, and what is the expectation of availability within that district? We need to pay close attention to that.
Thank you. I know when people call 911, they expect a fire station, an ambulance or a fire truck to be at the station waiting for their call. So I know that the more we add, the more that the likelihood of that ambulance and fire station being at that station, the likelihood goes down. So yeah, it's, so as far as this goes, does
So I'd reference back to the Ignite strategic plan when we looked at the resources of fire, and we estimated approximately 1,500 calls. We would have to consider additional resources within the community. That was an estimate based on many factors. Obviously, demands placed from a facility like this are much greater than what we would experience in a single-family residential neighborhood in a much more denser area. So we do need to pay close attention to that. You know, we do have future plans for station number 8 into the north side of the city. That's not funded to build or staff at this point, but it'll definitely be ready as we continue to monitor these demands.
Okay, that's good to know. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Shields.
Thank you, Mayor. I was just curious, with the walking trail it looks like that you're going to have around the lake detention area, will there be connectedness for the townhomes and the other multifamily around there, or is that intended just to be an amenity just for the senior facility?
So we're working on the kind of common element that would be that retention facility or whatever it's going to end up being. I think the intent would be is there would be some kind of interconnectivity between the senior facility and the overall neighborhood. But then the senior facility will have some of its own amenities as well that are more centrally located to their site, so that would be kind of more protected. But I would assume that that trail would probably be a common use for most of the neighbor residences, the townhomes, the apartments, and that type of use as well.
They won't share the pickleball courts?
I think the pickleball may get out of hand. I'm not sure what Andrew says, but I think he's probably going to say no.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you. Can I ask more questions about that detention area and stuff? Because you have 2 ponds there. You're going to keep both of them?
So they're kind of in a flux right now. We're actually discussing that.
Okay.
So a lot of those areas are areas that have become habitat type areas over
Yep.
time. We've done a study in there to try to figure out what is considered wetland areas
Yeah.
and waterland, water areas.
Yeah, you
And
got to
so
be careful there.
The intent is both of those ponds are super shallow and don't survive well. Like if you go out there now, they're pretty clean and nice. By the time late summer comes, they're pretty algae driven. So the intent and desire is to clean them and create a nice deep pond that can facilitate fish and facilitate aquatic life. But we're kind of working through what that plan will look like with
Pretty
between
big.
the
One of them's
developers.
pretty big.
Yes, well, it's kind of a marshy area on the south side. The north side is a decent sized pond, but again, you can darn near walk across it with waders, so.
Okay. And then, yeah, we need to, can you move that off? Because that's not the floor plan.
Will do.
Use the actual floor plan, or footprint, I mean. Because this one, access would be on you got 3 access points, basically.
Yeah, correct. So
All on the west side.
the main access will be here.
Yeah.
The memory care will have some parking on this side, but obviously restricted access to that entire facility.
Right.
The north side potentially will have some other additional access and potentially even some more advanced, covering or type of access on that side. And then the easterly side, we expect to have some parking and availability to get in. The garage entrance will be down on this end somewhere where we can get into the under garage in this area. So yeah, essentially you can access the facility on the east, north, and west, and limited or controlled access on the south.
Right. Okay. So for the memory loss, do you have to, looks like it's contained. That's the south side?
Yeah.
So it's contained, so they can't, patients can't get outside and such then?
The memory care portion of the building, the donut, the mini donut is totally self-contained, so residents will be able to stay there, and that's why the courtyard's there, because it's a secure interior
Is
courtyard.
that a
they can
courtyard in the middle of
access.
that?
Yes.
Okay.
That's a
there we go.
therapeutic garden
Alright.
space, so they'll be able to access that.
That
and
makes
there's
more sense. I was like,
couple
where are they gonna
porches
go?
on it.
Because
That-
I know you want
yeah.
them to go, I know you want your patients to go outside, so, okay.
And the beautiful thing about the mini donut is often in memory care, there's disruptive behaviors. And so a number of times I walk into a community and staff goes, hey, you want to take a walk? Not to me, but to a resident. You take them for a walk around the donut, and by the time you get back to where you started, hopefully things are better. So the building is therapeutic in its design.
Mm-hmm. It is. I'm sorry, do you have another question, or did I miss?
I
did
have
forget
one
to
more
take you off?
question.
Okay, go ahead, please.
which part of this is so is the 55 plus in this one, or is it just the?
The whole building will be licensed 55 plus.
Okay, so it's the independent, so that's the memory care down there, the circle, and then the assisted living is which part, and then the independent living?
The assisted living is to the right. Yep, thank you. And then the independent living would be to the north.
Okay, I just didn't know which one was which on the, okay, perfect, thank you.
Okay. All right, I'm going to keep moving through this agenda then, or through this public hearing. Is there anyone that wishes to speak in favor or in opposition to the application? Please come forward. Yes, please. Carla, right?
Yes, sir.
Would you just state your name for the record once again? I'm sorry.
Sure. My name's Carla McCauley. I've lived my whole life at 1150 Northeast Colburn Road, pretty much since I was 7 anyway. Those 2 ponds that you're speaking of, they used to be offshoots for the RB Rice. They would clean out the warehouse inside and shoot all that into those ponds.
Ooh.
And those ponds, and then it'd have EPA come out and test those waters. And I used to fish those, still sometimes do. We never would eat from there though, because there's very common to catch 3-eyed fish.
Oh, wow.
The habitat back there is full of wildlife. It's not uncommon to open our back door and see a turkey or several deer, beaver, muskrat, all those live there and have forever. As that north of all this construction connects to that wildlife for Jacomo.
Right.
And so all that wildlife comes through there and uses those ponds as part of their habitat. So I just wanted to make the council aware that, yes, they may be shallow and need something done, but there's more to those ponds. That smaller one is actually spring fed. It's gone dry lots of times in my past and always comes back. It's got a spring underneath it. And also might take in consideration of what RB Rice did long, long ago before we were so inundated with policies and things of what they shot into those ponds.
Yep.
So just wanted to make you more aware. Thank you.
You might get hired as a employee by the time this night's over by an engineer or something. Okay, thank you for that. I'm not seeing anybody else, so are there any additional questions from the council? Councilmember Shields?
Thank you, Mayor. I guess just following up on our public comment, will there be, or have there been environmental studies or checking for any possible contamination, anything in the area? Has anything come up there?
Yep, so we've done it. We had an environmental study of the pond and all of the area. We have identified all the potential impacts, and that's kind of like I say, as we start to talk about what could, would, and gonna happen out there, we're working through that process and on this piece of what is left for us to deal with, yes.
I appreciate that it's on your radar. So
yes.
Thank you.
Yep, thank you. Okay, does the applicant care to make any further comment? Okay, hearing no further testimony, I'm closing the public hearing and reopening the regular session. Before I go to the next one, though, is there any council discussion? We're not supposed to, in the public hearing, give opinions in the middle of the public hearing, but those windows that's a lot of windows. That's pretty impressive. I haven't seen something like that. Hopefully you can afford the light bill, because that was, and the deck, yeah, I would say the deck was really amazing, and I love the courtyards, but this design that's on the screen now is a lot better than the other one. I love it. You can just tell it's gonna be easy. You're gonna pull up on Lucky Road or whatever it's gonna be called, and you're gonna know right where to go. And I think that's gonna be welcoming. And I just think this design's so much better, so I'm glad you switched to it. It's really a good design. And yeah, like I said, man, if you put all those windows in, it's gonna bring a lot of happiness into this place, so that's good. All right, now I got to put my serious face back on. We got to go back into another public hearing. So we're going to close the regular session and open the public hearing in the matter of, which one are we on? D? Colburn Ridge LCRA redevelopment plan. Colburn Rice Investments LLC is the applicant. Would all those wishing to speak to this matter please rise and be sworn in by the city clerk?
Tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
You got, yes, Mr. Bushak, you're going to start this one off?
I will start the introduction. David
Okay.
Bushak, Chief Counsel of Economic Development and Planning. As you said, Mayor, we're building on our public hearings. So when I speak, we'll have exhibits to enter into the record. We'll have the evidence and testimony from the first two public hearings. And then there'll be a fourth public hearing, and that's on the Community Improvement District. And I will discuss that in more detail during my presentation. So first, we'll start with the developer's presentation.
All right. He's got a tough act to follow after that last one.
My budget isn't that high either. That's beautiful. My name is Kurt Peterson, here on behalf of the applicant, 900 West 48th Place, Kansas City, Missouri. It's a pleasure to see you all and be before you tonight. I was last before you on behalf of the applicant with this matter, which this is the LCRA public hearing on April 4th. So I will be efficient here, but I will also give due treatment since this is the public hearing and go through the presentation. I'm going to, at the very beginning, identify what will be new in here so you can kind of be looking for it, because the rest will be reminders. You'll be looking for the replacement of the proposed city shared sales tax with a CID. We'll come to that here in a little bit. You'll be looking at some specifics on projections for job creation associated with the overall master development. And also be looking for, there were two comments, this was recommended by the LCRA board here a week or two ago, but they had two items they added for consideration, so we'll speak to those at the end as well. The rest of it will be a refresher from the conceptual presentation. So first, doesn't take much time. This is our overview of where we're going. To talk about this developer, because I know it would be not a good use of your time, because everyone is aware of Mr. Mike Atchison, everything he's done from Chapel Ridge and Lakeview and everywhere over these decades. Here in Lee Summit, he's based here. He is one of the top developers in the metro and has extensive development history, as you can see on the screen, and you know from firsthand experience. So we're proud to have him as the proposed developer for this entire master site. You've heard a couple times, I think the number's 39, 38 acres when we were in that presentation of the rezoning and to PMEX that Matt was leading. The reason you see 41 acres here for this site is just a reminder that this overall LCRA does include that C-store. So that's why you see a little bit higher acreage than we talked about during the rezoning. Otherwise, I know we've talked about this site a lot. You can see it again on the screen. That is the proposed area for the LCRA. Again, same thing. I'm going to spend all of 15 seconds on this. You recognize this very well. You can see off to the side the table of proposed conceptual uses for the site. As the mayor's hawk eyes caught, that is the old concept for the continuum of care we just heard about. So I will pause on this because this is really the crux of the LCRA proposal and the CID, which is the next public hearing we'll have right after this. And that is, how do we address immense costs related to putting in public improvements that activate this entire site? You can see off to the left, you have a cost estimate that adds up to approximately $4 million for all the public infrastructure needed to set the table for development for this overall site, this 41 acres. You can see the teal color are the major road improvements, the two new north-south. I know we were debating the names there, but whatever, the western north-south and the eastern north-south, and then Colburn has improvements that you can see, and those were talked about by staff. Then you also have very extensive, there were good questions about stormwater, and you can see there's going to be a lot of work to be done in the ponds and overall stormwater infrastructure. That's what you see in that $1.4 million number at the bottom of the table on the left. And then you also just have the other associated public utilities like water associated with putting in the public streets and all of that. So again, if I'm pausing, this is it. This is what we're trying to solve for to make all of the development possible through the LCRA and the CID, this significant public improvement cost. So specific to the LCRA, there are two LCRA benefits here that come along with the proposal. The first, which is on the screen, is a proposed tax abatement plus then a public improvement assessment. So the way I describe this at conceptual, nothing has changed, It's that we would have a 50%, we call it floating as opposed to fixed, floating abatement. So for any of these pieces that when they get developed in that overall site plan, they would have a 50%, they would, first of all, LCRA, right? We pour out the glass, there's no taxes left, right? We have an exemption. We would then fill the glass half back up with pilots. Pilots are then distributed as paid each year with the tax bill. They're paid to all the taxing jurisdictions, including the city and the school district, in the proportion of the levies. But that's half the glass, right? With this particular proposal, we fill the other half of the glass up too, so that the end user, whether it's our continuum of care or C-store, whatever else is gonna go on this site, they'll pay 100% of their taxes every year during this entire LCRA. But that second 50%, not the pilots, the second 50% would be called a public improvement assessment. Again, to the user, they're paying their taxes, right? But that second 50% is able to go back and reimburse the master developer over a course of time with interest for that immense amount, approximately $4 million of investment made upfront in public infrastructure. So the short of it is, this allows huge investment in the development by the developer in the public infrastructure with, hopefully, if everything goes as planned, the developer has to perform, has to get all this to happen, all this to build out that's shown in the concept plan or other commercial and residential development. And over time, he would get reimbursed with that special assessment or public improvement assessment portion of filling up that glass. The second piece of two of the LCRA is sales tax exemption, as you all have been accustomed to seeing. The first benefit of two there with sales tax exemption is it helps buy down the cost of the public infrastructure. That $4 million estimate from our engineer already assumes that you're not paying Missouri sales and use tax on those materials for that work. So that's the first. And the second is it helps us compete for the best users out there. It does provide a benefit to these end users. And very importantly, with LCRA, you'll remember we do a deed leaseback. That's how the state statute has us activate an LCRA benefit like this. Each one of our users that is a third party, like the continuum of care that we just heard about, has to agree to do a deed leaseback, or it doesn't trigger this pour out the glass, fill it up with pilots, fill it up with public assessments. So this is also a good inducement to make sure that there's motivation to make sure that this all plays out correctly. So those are the two pieces of LCRA. This is what we always put on the screen, which is just an estimate. I know staff has a very similar estimate as well for what the total Missouri sales and use tax exemption will actually translate into with respect to dollars. The top line yellow is for the entire huge master development, the entire estimated value of that exemption. And then we always go down to the next yellow is the city's portion of that. And then look at the bottom is the percentage that kind of the city's piece of the overall sales tax exemption, and that's just under 20%. Even though we have a public hearing in a minute, I'm just going to briefly touch on it, which will truncate our public hearing in a moment on the CID. So the other piece of this to help, again, it's all about the public infrastructure, to help make sure the developer hopefully gets reimbursed as much as possible, is a 1% community improvement district sales tax. This, again, will be only used to reimburse public infrastructure. Right now, assuming the C-store, if it was the only sales tax producer, that would generate $20,000 to $30,000 per year. If there ended up, on Colburn, being some more sales tax production by one of those buildings, it would just help this get paid back faster. It doesn't mean more money for the developer. It just means more quickly we would have the LCRA disband and be done with reimbursements of public infrastructure. In terms of why, right? Why is this good? Again, these are repetitive other than the last bullet, which is job creation, but we'll roll through them quickly because they're just as hopefully compelling as they were a few months ago to you. The first is the fact that this area, which is indicated with the blue arrow on the screen there at Rice and Colburn, the black is the outline of the current US 50 Missouri 291 Urban Renewal Area or LCRA area that the city long ago put in place, saying this is a special area that we find that there's blight and we want to push more investment, capital investment and development through LCRA. So this proposal actually extends just across Colburn to the north, that existing LCRA. Also in the city's economic development policy, this is within a target area, specifically I-470 North Targeted Planning Area. Highlighted on the screen is just an excerpt from when this targeted area is discussed in the policy. It talks about the importance of the fact that undeveloped acreage exists on the north side of Colburn, but development of this area would likely require significant sewer and traffic improvements, which is very consistent with, like I keep saying, the crux of why this proposal is being made to you this evening. Always go to the numbers, right? Because a huge part of this is this a good deal for the taxpayers, right? Is this a good deal, frankly, for the school district? Is it a good deal for all the taxing jurisdictions? And so this slide, while I won't go through each line, is laying out 3 periods of time. It's laying out today how much in the way of taxes is being generated for the city, the county, the school district, and the other taxing jurisdictions. You can see that property taxes are very, very low, $800 a year. During the LCRA, you can see a breakdown between property taxes, which you can see the ranges on the screen. They get pretty significant. Remember, when I say property taxes, again, this helps me on visual. Glass of water, that first half of the glass we fill back up, the pilots, that's what you're looking at on the screen when I say during the LCRA, and you see those numbers. That's pilots flowing to the taxing jurisdictions. You also see the sales tax, which again would come from the C-store. They'd be much higher if we land other sales tax producers. And then just with respect to the city, we always point out the excise tax because it's not insignificant when it comes to developments happening. So there'd be city excise tax that would flow as well as the development is built out. The last period of time there, the third period of time, is once the LCRA burns off, right? Once we either reach the end of the maximum, I'll talk about timing in a minute, but the maximum it could go is 25 years. But we've modeled it right now that it could be as short as 12 to 13 years. But wherever it lands when it's done, that last category after LCRA shows how now it's the full glass of water, right, is flowing to the taxing jurisdictions, which gets quite high for this master development. So again, where are we? Is this compelling? Is this good for the taxpayer? This is giving you numbers that support the fact that absolutely this is much better than the field that's there today with $800 that's limited without expensive public infrastructure. Brief reference again, I think compelling to us all. There's some amazing, for the next generation worth of land to the north that we're hoping our friends at PRI will soon be interested in putting in play for development. And this infrastructure, I think staff even mentioned this earlier, maybe Mr. Schlick too, that this is building that public infrastructure north from Colburn and helping set the table again for us to pick up and go north into the PRI property. Another reason that this is hopefully a compelling plan. So the mayor sometimes gets intense, and he got intense on me back in April, and he admonished me for not highlighting
Didn't admonish you.
I would call it admonishing. There were witnesses. We can watch the tape.
It was late night.
We dropped the flag. We can watch the tape. But on job creation, he was right. We should not have taken that for granted, honestly, because you have a master development like this, and there's a lot of jobs. And so I actually have a whole sheet of assumptions here behind this, but they're all pragmatic and realistic. But just not wanting to have a really busy slide, you can see all those conceptual uses that you've heard talked about tonight by Matt and now by me. And you draw your eyes over to the middle, and you can see generally a realistic, it's actually conservative, the amount of jobs that could be created. And then we made very conservative assumptions about how much people would make. And you get, at the end of the day, the yellow box, which is north of annual salaries and wages of $7 million just for this site, let alone setting the table for PR and all that. So yes, this should have been in the original presentation, and thank you for that suggestion. Here it is. Hopefully this is compelling as well. The slide we always put up at the end is to say the proposal before you is a certain amount of public incentives as described tonight, and what percentage is that of the estimated overall capital investment in the 41 acres? And that's the number, the percentage you see at the bottom, which is approximately 8%. I showed this slide during the conceptual hearing, and I'm going to be brief as I was then. We talked a little bit deeper about it, but remember a moment ago I said the request before you is LCRA. That could go as long as 25 years to pay back the $4 million of public improvements investment that Mr. Atchison will make right away. There's all sorts of assumptions that have to be made to make estimates about how quickly that repayment could happen. The way the modeling we shared with staff and went over with them suggest it could be in about 12 years. This was simply to show we did all sorts of sensitivity. There's scenarios where a developer never gets paid back fully. That's the developer's risk. That's a risky proposition here, being a real estate developer. And there's some where it's paid back as soon as about 12 years, as you can see on the table. This is simply showing we were thoughtful about it. We talked to staff, and there's a whole range of what could happen. But our plan is to develop quickly and have the repayment happen quickly. So where I want to end, and by the way, I kind of blew through this and didn't call attention to it other than at the beginning. I did want to note that the developer was responsive to the comments. It was really the main constructive criticism. The constructive criticism from the conceptual was, can you rethink the shared city sales tax part and think about, see if the numbers work to insert a community improvement district sales tax instead. So I should have mentioned that a moment ago, but that's what I just presented to you. We did listen to that, what was really a good suggestion, actually. So I'd like to finish with talking about the LCRA board meeting we had, which resulted in a recommendation to this body for the proposal that I'm speaking to you about right now. But there was two added thoughts that I wanted to address that they raised. That is the three board members. The first is that, and this is in your packet, so I'm not kind of making this up from memory, but is hey, with respect to the public infrastructure, so I'll put it back on the screen. In fact, can I cheat, Matt? Can you help me? I know Matt has an image for this. So what we're going to put on the screen is responsive to what the LCRA board requested, which they said, hey, you've described the $4 million of public improvement, seems compelling, we're making a recommendation, but we think there should be some sort of exhibit and visual representation of what the phasing will be for that. So Mr. Atchison himself at that meeting with his words described what I'm going to show you with the picture. We honestly, humbly don't think we need to like amend the plan or anything for this, but we're going to put it on the record so everybody can see this and can effectively be pseudo part of the overall approval that we told you this is what we're going to do. So on the screen before you now is the same 41 acres we've been talking about. If you look at the yellow color there, think about that as no matter what, phase one, mobilize up front, Mr. Atchison is ready to do that. And then if you look over and you can see that's most of the Colburn improvements other than a right turn lane over there in red, there's one of those, but otherwise it's all the Colburn improvements and it's that westernmost north-south public street and the water that goes along with it. It happens to have the sanitary as well. Sanitary improvements would happen all with that. And then all of those expensive stormwater improvements to the ponds and all of that. So everything I just said, which happens to be of the 4 million, give me a little bit of sway here, but call it 3.3 million, something like that, of the 4 million. For sure, will happen, mobilized all at once. The reason we have the other color, the rose color on the east, is because although the plan, the intention, we anticipate doing the rose color, which is the north-south public street, along with the one right turn lane there on Colburn as you're heading westbound. We intend to do that with everything else. It would be all one phase, but Mr. Atchison being completely transparent, as he was with LCRA and we are now, is that somehow if the market for, let's say, the townhomes, which are up in that northeast corner, the banks are just saying, look, you got this is no. We're not doing that right now. There's some sort of delay, which we don't foresee, even right now, we don't foresee that. Then we would wait and do the rose color as soon as we can open up and actually do development over there. So recap in short, in response to the LCRA board's good question, and putting it on the record now is, we see the yellow, if you will, we'll call it phase one public improvements, and the rose color, the phase two public improvements. Honestly, for us, it's one phase. But we're telling you that if it ever got broken up because it would be market conditions, it would be the rose color. What did I say? 4 million, about 700,000 of it we would defer until we were able to develop off on the east side of the project plan. That was one of two items that LCRA board raised. The second one that they raised had to do with Ignite and some design principles. So it was particularly one LCRA board member that was extra interested in this topic and said specifically, I would like pages, and it's this specific, pages 111 to 115 of Ignite. I would like you to conform, as you build out the whole site, conform was the verb. I would like you to conform to those pages, and I'm not gonna put it up there and everything, but it's what you'd imagine, design principles, pictures, and talking about, pedestrian scale and public art and surface parking, building orientation, those sorts of things. And so our response is, and frankly, it's a privilege to have a client, I don't always, like Mr. Atchison, who can stand there and said, I agree with Ignite. Totally agree. And my record shows everywhere I've developed that I'm always pushing the envelope for quality. And I intend to do the same thing here. And he said, when we go through with staff and professional staff, I'm like, guaranteed they'll say this in a minute because this is so true. Every time we take something through, like continuum of care was here tonight, or something Mr. Atchison might do, in 6 months as part of this overall development, guess what's going to get referenced? First by the developer and their design team, then by staff. If we miss something, staff will bring it up. So while we respect that LCRA board member's comment, we agree with the spirit of it. The idea that the design principles, these aren't even requirements, right? Every deal, it's mix and match. The idea of conforming everything we do out there to exactly a certain pages, we respectfully would say we'd prefer not to have that be kind of a codified comment, but absolutely on the record again, Mr. Atchison will pursue this every time. And by the way, and staff will pursue it every time as appropriate for projects that come in. So with that, Mayor, we are prepared later, when appropriate, to answer any questions you all have.
All right, thank you. Mr. Bushek?
All right, I will start by entering into the record Exhibits 1 through 12 as they're contained in your meeting packet, and then also add as number 13 all the evidence and testimony from the first 2 public hearings.
Thank you. Please enter into the record Exhibits 1 through 12, as well as Exhibit 13, the previous testimonies from the public hearings regarding this location and application.
Very good. So I will walk through my presentation as you're used to seeing when we have incentive requests like this, and I will be talking about both the LCRA and the CID together in this hearing, and then entering all that evidence and testimony into the next public hearing for the CID, so feel free to ask questions about both of the incentives as I talk about this. Start with our analysis of the incentives, and we focus on the time periods. During the construction period, the request is to use the LCRA for sales and use tax exemption, and then for a period of up to 25 years, it's this abatement and assessment function that has already been described to you. And then the new change with this request is an elimination of their previous request for a city sales tax sharing, and it's been replaced by a community improvement district. So the next public hearing will be a separate public hearing for your consideration of layering a community improvement district over the entire area, which will have the effect of imposing a new 1-cent sales tax at any retail sales within the area. And that's the replacement for that sales tax sharing component that everybody generally said they didn't like when they made their conceptual presentation. Then the benefit to the taxing districts, these numbers are the same as you saw at the conceptual presentation. Nominal taxes being produced today. During the first year after full build-out, about $425,000, resulting from this 50% pass-through to the taxing districts. The city's share shown in green. And then over the full 25-year period, substantial benefits in terms of millions of dollars. And this number here is assuming that the project does pay off as projected by the developer in 2036. And so the number down here, over the full 25-year period, assuming that's correct, the benefit to the taxing districts is over $18 million from this project. Then next we look at the value of the incentive request to the developer. Total project cost of $83 million. And when you work through the assessment, the CID reimbursement, and the sales tax exemption benefits, the total incentive benefit to the developer is 7.7% of the total project costs, which is, as we've discussed, that's at the lower end of the range of incentives that the City Council has historically approved across all projects and all types of incentives. It's not the lowest, but it's at the lower end of all of those. Then the impact of the city, shown down here, the sales and use tax exemption and the real property tax abatement. The city's foregoing about $1.1 million in revenue for the time period ending at their projected ending period of 2036. And then the benefit during that same time period, the pilots that flow to the city, and then the sales tax revenues. And if you were to compare this sheet to the previous version at the conceptual presentation, this number was substantially lower because they were proposing that sales tax sharing with the city. So all of the sales tax revenues that the city would normally collect flow through to the city as normal, and then the additional 1-cent sales taxes on top of that as reimbursement for the developer. So this number here is substantially higher than what you saw at the conceptual presentation. Then this is our one-page summary of all of these incentive requests, and it just itemizes everything that I just discussed. The sales tax exemption on construction materials provides this benefit. And then the real property tax abatement and the assessments estimated about 3.8 million. And then the CID sales tax estimated to benefit the developer to the tune of about $200,000. And there's one important point that I will point out here, because this became a point of discussion at the LCRA meeting. Each of these numbers here will be verified and certified by the city. So whereas in some cases, when you approve a property tax abatement, whatever the dollar benefit is to the developer over a period of years, it is what it is. We're not matching it up with any cost. There's some exceptions to that, but that's typically not the case. In this situation, because the developer's targeting some very specific public improvements, we will use the certification process that we do for community improvement districts and tax increment financing plans. So when they incur costs, they will submit those costs to the city. They'll be reviewed and approved by the finance department. And eventually, whatever the actual number is for the construction of those public improvements with interest will be the actual number that they will benefit from this incentive package. And so at the outset, the sales tax exemption is a benefit that will be certified by the city. That number is what it will be. And then these two incentive functions will last as long as it takes to reimburse the developer for their actual certified costs. That's an important point that becomes relevant to one of the items I'll talk about in a moment as a result of the LCRA's recommendations. The next slide then, this is the table that you've seen on previous occasions, and it shows the Colburn Ridge project in the context of the other redevelopment plans that you have approved, and then there's one other that's being considered, and we'll have that public hearing in a few weeks. A few things to point out. This would be the largest LCRA redevelopment plan that you have approved, if you do approve it. It has the full array of land uses, which is unique to this project. It has the property tax redirection as opposed to abatement, so it serves as a reimbursement tool. And then interesting mix of land uses over here. Some of these parcels are technically greenfield. There has been no development on them. And there's some of the parcels that have had previous development. There's some old farm-type structures. I think there's an old oil well that's on the property. So that's all itemized in the blight study. So it's a unique piece of property in that respect. And then we have over here the additional incentive tool that's requested. That's the CID as a companion to the LCRA redevelopment plan. Next, we turn our attention to the 3 findings that you need to make to approve a redevelopment plan. And the first is the blight finding, and this has already been discussed. And you saw a close-up of this map in the previous presentation. This is the map of the Highway 50 and 291 urban renewal area that the City Council previously approved. This property is just to the north up here. So if you approve this plan, it would technically be an extension of this urban renewal area to include this property. And the blight study is contained in the record. Developer can speak to that if you want to hear more testimony about the blight, but I can tell you with a high degree of confidence that you can make a legally defensible blight finding for this property. The next finding is necessity, and we've talked extensively about what this finding means in the context of the LCRA Act. It's that soft necessity finding. It says that you need to find that redevelopment of the project is necessary and in the health, safety, and welfare for the community. But we did conduct a more rigorous financial analysis. Columbia Capital did a full review of this project, and the summary of their conclusion is that in a leveraged scenario, meaning if debt is incurred, this project would not, without incentives, would not produce a sufficient rate of return to achieve a market rate of return. Their indication is that given the variety of land uses for this project, a market rate of return would be somewhere between 12 and 15%. Without incentives, the rate of return would be closer to 7%, so probably half or so of what the return would need to be to reach market rate of return. And then with the incentives, the return reaches just about 12%. So Columbia Capital's conclusion is that the project is financially feasible as it's been proposed. Developer proposes a 50-50 mix of equity and leverage or debt for this project, and that's what these calculations are based on. And the project does demonstrate that it's not financially feasible without the requested incentives and does become financially feasible with the requested incentives. The last item that I will cover then is the consistency with the comprehensive plan. And I'm going to, in part, focus on two of the new recommendations that the LCRA board added here. So I'll pause and say this. Your LCRA board is doing a fantastic job. There was very lively and spirited debate about this project. The 2 points that are added here, and so I'll be focusing on paragraphs D and E here, those were the specific recommendations that the LCRA board added to this resolution. We prepared the draft of the resolution for their consideration. After extensive discussion, they added these 2 points, and I'll cover each of these. And I'll also say this before I walk through some thoughts on these 2 points. It may sound like I'm arguing against or rebutting these 2 conditions, but I'm not. Our staff team has had extensive discussion about these 2 points over the last several days to get ready for this meeting. And so the points that I'm raising, I would say are more factual in nature or more process discussion than anything. And so please don't take my comments as rebutting these 2 new recommendations, but I'm providing our full staff team comments on these 2 conditions. So paragraph D, their recommendation is to prepare a phased development plan that shows how the infrastructure improvements are going to be paid for within each phase of development. So you've actually already heard the response from the developer, which is there may be 2 phases or may all be constructed in 1 phase, but if they have to do 2 phases, the bulk of the public improvements would occur in phase 1. The vast majority of those costs would be incurred in the first phase. One of the things that I mentioned at the LCRA meeting, and I'm not sure they fully processed what I was saying, was that certification process that I just mentioned, which is, I think the thrust behind this recommendation is a concern that you would be approving an incentive package that doesn't match up with what their estimated costs are. But the certification process takes care of that. As they incur the public improvement costs, the city will certify those costs, and this incentive package will only last as long as necessary to reimburse them for those certified costs. And I think that really addresses what they were trying to get at with the heart of this recommendation, which is this phase plan to accommodate the fact that some of the public improvements might not be built up front. I think the certification process answers that. And then also, I guess the third point is the concept plan and the zoning plan that you just heard really kind of addresses this in the sense that this recommendation kind of bleeds over into the zoning and concept plan that you've already heard about. So we're kind of mixing this incentive plan with the zoning plan, and I think this item D kind of touches on that. And then paragraph E, this was their specific recommendation to you to require the developer to revise the site plan to conform to the design principles of the Ignite Comprehensive Plan on pages 111 through 115. And their discussion, and like I said, it was a spirited debate, their recommendation was very specific as to those pages in the comprehensive plan. So I think this is worth just a bit of discussion. If you start on page 96 of the comprehensive plan, there's 3 types of development patterns that the comp plan calls for. There's activity centers, there's the corridor, neighborhood commercial node corridor concept as the second, and then the third is what the comp plan calls standard development. And the next several pages in the comp plan walk through recommendations for each of those 3 types of development. When you get to page 111, those are the design principles that are specific to the activity centers only. So this recommendation to revise the site plan to conform to pages 111 through 115 of the comp plan deal only with the 5 specific activity centers and not this property. And as a reminder, those 5 activity centers are the Downtown Activity Center, Rock Island Urban Center within the South PRI property, Summit Activity Center, the Woods Chapel Activity Center north of the PRI property, and the new Longview Activity Center. So this specific recommendation, and I'll admit it kind of caught us off guard when this happened at the LCRA meeting. Upon further review, those specific pages don't really deal with this property. They're limited to 5 specific areas in the city. A second point is that while it is within the LCRA board's jurisdiction to make recommendations to you about the comprehensive plan, because one of the 3 findings that you have to make is that this plan is consistent with the comprehensive plan, this specific recommendation kind of bleeds into the zoning. The first 2 hearings that you already heard really deal with the design, and you've already, especially that second public hearing, which was a PDP for the senior care facility, you heard a lot about the design. So an attempt by the LCRA board to tell you to revise this plan to follow the design principles of activity centers, it's kind of mixing too many different planning elements, I think. Again, I'm not trying to be argumentative against their recommendation, but.
Are you saying that they're bleeding into the planning commission's job?
Exactly. I mean, that's kind of the conclusion, which is this point, and the person who was very vocal on this point kind of admitted this. He said he doesn't agree with the planning commission's recommendation to you on the 2 hearings that you just heard. That's his opinion, but that's exactly the point. That's kind of the planning commission's jurisdiction.
Right.
So, with that, I've covered all 3 of the findings, and, but ultimately, they did recommend, the LCRA board recommended that you do approve this plan as it's been presented to you with these specific changes that I've discussed. So I will stop there and be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, well, it's a lot, but on those last 2 items, just to kind of make sure council, the second one is basically, you said it didn't really apply because it wasn't even in the activity centers as well as it bleeds over into the planning commission.
Correct.
But the D on the page that you have here, I understand where they're coming from on this. It seems like it is in their lane. However, do we do things like this with other developers where we you know, make it concrete like this? Because if you're certifying and you're going to make sure we're not paying for costs that didn't happen, that's the important thing for us.
Yeah.
That's the important thing for us, is to make sure we're not paying a developer money for a road that they haven't built and they're not going to build.
Right, and so maybe as a point of comparison, if you think of Discovery Park, and Discovery Park has 4 different project areas, and soon, I think next month, you'll be hearing the hearing for the first PDP of the first of those 4 areas. So when you have a really large development and you break it up into different project areas, this sort of concept comes into play a little bit. It doesn't really in this case for the reasons that the applicant just explained to you, which is if there's any phasing at all, it might be that they don't fund the eastern north-south public improvement, that road, but they probably will. But in any event, it doesn't seem like it gives rise to actually amending this plan to address this issue, because I'm not really sure what you do beyond the certification process that I mentioned.
Okay. All right, well then let's turn this over to council. There's a lot of information there. We've got these incentives in front of us. They've been redesigned to fit what we're used to seeing, which I think it makes it easier for us to understand. Councilmember Shields, please.
Thank you, Mayor. I think this question, I don't know if it's for staff or the developer, just a clarification on the slide, the public infrastructure improvements where you have the list of all the costs that total up to the 4 million. There's a star next to pump station upgrades. I feel like we might have talked about that in a prior conceptual, but I can't remember what's the star. Is that something that may or may not be done, or you might give a credit to the city, or what's going on there?
Your memory is right, your itch is right. We did talk about it, but that's a lot of council meetings since then, and this is a nuance. So here's what we talked about. Long-term, this is like being educated by city staff, so I'm being the parrot. Long-term, to the north, as you go on the PRI property, there are multiple pump stations, sanitary sewer improvements, right, that need to be done. And I think most people are aware of that. We have a 1950s, we don't slide it, but we have a 1950, if you think of the northwest corner of the 41 acres that we're talking about, there's a 1950s era pump station there now, which nobody's super thrilled about putting any money to. It doesn't have much life left. And so what we've said is, with that asterisk, is just saying, and this is in talking to city staff too, we'll put that $250,000 either towards, and I'm even gonna stop and not get into any more detail, but improvement A we could do, or improvement B, temporary, this and that. We'll work with staff, but no matter what, we'll work with staff and agree, and we'll put that money towards that. So it's kind of like a wild card. We need to spend it, and there needs to be sanitary improvements beyond continuum of care and C-store. We have to do sanitary improvements. We'll do it, But the star is so that you're always aware. There could be some flexibility as we work with staff, what it looks like.
So like the city might put some other kind of solution in place, and you would pay the city that money, and then you would get reimbursed out of the pool of LCRA funds. I'm
Right, there
probably not
could
wording
be.
that right, but is that kind of like what would happen is you'd write the city a check, and then the city would write you a check out of the other account that's earmarked for your
And it could go either
reimbursables?
way, right? Maybe we would put in a temporary pump station, right, just north of the site, and it would cost more than $250, and maybe we'd pay for it and the city would reimburse us. Maybe the city would pay and we put in $250 and get reimbursed our $250 over time. So you're playing around with all the levers, exactly, yeah.
Okay, fair enough. And then we talked a little bit about the kind of protection in that there wouldn't be any reimbursements until the receipts were in hand, basically. So the only thing that they kind of get up front is the sales tax exemption, is that right? But that, again, they're not getting until they're actually spending money on materials.
That's correct. So they'll receive the benefit of the sales tax exemption when they start purchasing materials, and that will need to be quantified, so we'll keep a tally of that. And then as the project generates the two sources of revenue, that provides reimbursement over a period of years to the developer to match up with the certified costs.
Okay. And then the last question I had is, you kind of walked through those recommendations from the LCRA board for items D and E. If we wanted to not follow those, do we need to amend anything tonight, or?
No, so those are just two additional recommendations in the resolution. There's nothing in particular that you need to do to deal with them or not deal with them. If you approve the ordinance, you'll be approving the plan as it's been presented to you. You're effectively not carrying out or following those recommendations, but you don't need to do anything affirmative with respect to those two specific points.
So if we wanted to follow them, we would need to do something additional, but if we're okay with leaving them out, we don't need to do anything?
Exactly, and we have discussed those options with the developer. I discussed with them the possibility of, do you want to amend the plan to do either of these and address these points? They said no, they would like to present the plan to you as it was presented to the board. And so you're correct. If you told us, yes, we want to do one or both of those, we would need to amend the plan, hold that ordinance, and bring it back to you at another date.
Okay, gotcha. I think those are all my questions. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Other questions? Okay, so summary on this, just as we go, because you guys have been presenting for a while. You got $4 million worth of, or is it 4 million? Of public improvements that we're basically reimbursing the developer for. It is, in your opinion, blight for the most part. It is in the LCRA map area targeted for these type of incentives, and the return or the investment, in your opinion, is the
rate of return without incentives.
Thank you, rate of return. The amount of the benefit, yeah, is 7.7% is what I'm saying here?
Yes, that's
Yep.
right.
Okay. Very good. Thank you, sir. If there aren't questions, then I'm going to ask if there's anyone that wishes to speak in favor or in opposition to the application, please come forward. All right, any additional questions from council? Does the applicant care to make any further comment?
Thank you.
Thank you. Hearing no further testimony, I'm closing the public hearing and reopening the regular session. Any council discussion on this one? We have one more to get through, but if you want to make any comment on this, yes, Councilmember Lovell.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm very pleased with some of the parameters that were put into this incentive request. I think it is the true intent of transparency and certification of the cost, and not just ratcheting this thing up to maximize the 20%. I think the requirements for the public improvements are, they're expensive, difficult to do, and I commend LCRA, the amount of work and diligence they did. I love the commitment to design. And I really, again, just the oversight of the costs as they're incurred, being verified and paid. I believe this is the way, that how we should be using incentives in the future. And so I'm very pleased with what's been put together here. I think it's a great area that needs to be developed. It's been sitting there for a long time. I think it's a great use. The senior facility is beautiful. I could tell your passion, design, beauty, the developer's commitment to follow those things. This thing hits on a lot of fronts for me, so I'm very pleased with it. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you. I'll just add to yours, because I wrote down just a few bullet points. It is a super difficult area to develop, so you can see tonight a lot of moving parts. And honestly, it's kind of a mess with the left turns and the immediate left turn right after. I mean, it's not a safe area, so this will be a benefit. But then on top of that, we got sewer improvements and then the environmental we've talked about. So there's a lot of positives going forward. So, but I think we have one more public hearing to get through. And this is regarding the CID, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, then is it okay if I run through this one? Because I think there's going to be Mr. Peterson, are you going to do a lot of testimony on this one?
No, at the moment, I'm going to ask that you take my CID testimony.
Okay, thank you. Then I'm going to close the regular session, open the public hearing in the matter of, where am I? Turn the page. Yeah, turn the page. Agenda item 4E, this would be a public hearing on the Colburn Ridge Community Improvement District, Colburn Rice Investments LLC applicant. Would all those wishing to speak to this matter please rise and be sworn in by the city clerk?
Tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
Think you. Mr. Bushek, you just talked about all this, but.
Yes. I would like to enter into the record exhibits 1 through 13 as they're listed in your meeting packet, and then number 14 will be all the evidence and testimony from the first 3 hearings.
Please enter into the record 1 through 13 from the packet, and as well as Exhibit 14, the previous 3 testimonies from the public hearings regarding this Colburn Ridge Community Improvement / Colburn Ridge Road Improvement.
And with that, I think we've had a thorough discussion. I think we may be setting a new record of packing in the most evidence and testimony stacked through 4 public hearings in the shortest amount of time ever. So
I don't know about the shortest amount of time, but I will say Mr. Peterson he's pushing it tonight. Go ahead, sir.
That's it. I think all the previous discussion, evidence and testimony are in the record, and we can conclude.
I'm going to let him
you have more
say a few words if he would like to about the CID, if we missed anything in this last presentation you want to add on.
No, thank you. And Mr. Bushek, by saying all testimony, did put it on the record.
Yes, he did.
So thank you.
Okay. So we do have a CID in place for this. You've got a C-store is what they're proposing. The medical offices, you never know, might turn into something else that might have some sales. So it could generate more, but for the most part, we're looking at a C-store. Is there any questions for applicant or the staff? Okay, anyone that would like to speak in favor or in opposition to this application? All right. Any additional questions from council? Does the applicant care to make further comment?
No, thank you.
Thank you. Hearing no further testimony, I'm closing the public hearing and reopening the regular session. Is there any council discussion on this application? Yes, Councilmember Pryor.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to say to Mr. Atchison, thank you for continuing to invest in our community and bringing, in my opinion, good developments to our city. So thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Shields.
Thank you, Mayor. I think overall this is going to be a great development. I was really excited by everything that we saw tonight. I think it'll be a real benefit to the community. Very much appreciated all of the breakdown of the tax benefit to the city as well as the costs, all the public infrastructure improvements. And last night I just want to say I really appreciate that the CID was brought back as opposed to the sales tax, half of the sales tax. And I appreciate listening to that comment, working the numbers and finding a way to work with something we were all more comfortable with. So excited to support this. Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Lopez.
Thanks, Mayor. There's not a whole lot more that I can add to what my colleagues have already stated. Other than, I guess this is, as Councilmember Lovell did say, kind of the right way of how we should approach just development in Lee Summit. Just overall, from the conceptual presentations that were made to our feedback that was provided during that conceptual presentation, to the developer, and his development team going back, listening and modifying and responding to what we were asking for on behalf of the city. As far as the elected officials, staff, thank you for putting the extra time into this. This is just the model of how we should continue to tackle these kind of complicated projects. So that's all I really want to say. So everything speaks for itself, quality all the way around. So really proud to have this in our city. So thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember DeMoro.
Thank you, Mayor. And just to echo what has been said, this is a, number one, it's a challenge to develop. I mean, it's well demonstrated. That's that corner. I've driven by that corner for most of my life. And you look over there and it is a challenge to develop. There are a lot of moving parts to this development. And I do appreciate the design and the configuration of the living facilities. I think it's going to be definitely an eye-catching portion of the corner of Rice and Colburn. And then, on the end of my comment, I think this is probably the smallest, the largest development and the smallest incentive I have ever seen. I mean, the incentive ask is well within the reason of what we're looking for. So I like the whole thing. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll just add, big picture wise, I would have said 10 years ago, I don't know how this area is going to ever develop unless you can get access from 470. Of course, Strother came in, and that helps. But it took a lot of creativity on this one. So it's really impressive as far as piecing it together and figuring out how to develop this area. And I think it probably took a hometown person to want to do it because it's a tough area. So with that said, I think we can get through these ordinances and then take a break. Okay. Councilmember Shields, would you start us off with Bill number 23-106?
Thank you, Mayor. I move for second reading of Bill number 23-106, an ordinance approving rezoning from District CP2 Plan Community Commercial District and CS Plan Commercial Services District to District P Mixed Plan Mixed Use District and Conceptual Preliminary Development Plan for land located at 900 Northeast Colburn Road, all in accordance with the provisions of Chapter 33 of the Unified Development Ordinance of the Code of Ordinances for the City of Lee Summit, Missouri.
Thank you. We have a motion to move to second reading. Bill number 23-106 by Councilmember Shields, seconded by Councilmember Lovell. Discussion? Seeing none, please cast your vote. All votes are in. Please record the vote. And that passes 9-0. All right, thank you. Councilmember Lovell, would you please read Bill number 23-107?
Thank you, Mayor. I move to advance the second reading Bill number 23-107, an ordinance approving a preliminary development plan for Colburn Road Investments, senior living facility on land located at 900 Northeast Colburn Road, all in accordance with the provisions of Chapter 33, Unified Development Ordinance of the Code of Ordinances for the City of Lee Summit, Missouri.
Thank you. We have a motion to move to second reading Bill number 23-107 by Councilmember Lovell, seconded by Councilmember Hodges. Discussion? Seeing none, please cast your vote. All votes are in. Please record the vote. And it passes 9-0. Thank you. Councilmember DeMoro, would you please read Bill number 23-108?
Thank you, Mayor. I move to advance the second reading Bill number 23-108, an ordinance approving the Colburn Ridge land clearance for redevelopment authority redevelopment plan.
Thank you. We have a motion on the floor to move to second reading Bill number 23-108 by Councilmember DeMoro, seconded by Councilmember Pryor. Discussion? Seeing none, please cast your vote. All votes are in. Please record the vote. Passes 9-0. And one more. Councilmember Hodges, would you please read Bill number 23-109?
I advance to second reading Bill number 23-109, an ordinance approving the petition for establishment of the Colburn Ridge Community Improvement District.
Thank you. We have a motion to move to second reading Bill number 23-109 by Councilmember Hodges, seconded by Councilmember DeMoro. Discussion? Seeing none, please cast your vote. All votes are in. Please record the vote. That bill does move to second reading unanimously as the others. Thank you so much, and thank you for, again, investing in Lee Summit. Hey, before we break, can I do public comments real quick, because they've been waiting patiently? I'd like to do public comments. We have Ms. Tracy Palin and Kyle Massey. Yeah, please. Sorry, we've had a long night. I want to make sure I did that before making you wait another 15 minutes or so. So come on forward, please. Yeah, either one, whatever one you feel most comfortable there.
We weren't sure that this was the forum to pose our question, but because time is of the essence, we wanted to bring it to you today. So my husband and I are both long-term residents of Lee Summit, and we recently purchased a home in Cedar Creek Estates. We're on Hoke Lane between 3rd and Ward.
Right.
We think we're in District 2. And we've been made aware of an upcoming sidewalk gap project that will impact our property. And we were just informed yesterday that this work will commence in 2 to 3 weeks at our location, and that the city planning department, they went ahead and came by our house yesterday to kind of discuss the proposed work. And due to the sloping elevation of our property, they've informed us to meet the ADA requirements that this work will involve replacing 75% of our driveway and the installation of concrete curbing along the back side of the property all the way across the front of our sidewalk or our property. And if the city moves forward with this work as they're suggesting, in our opinion, it's just going to have a real negative impact on the appearance of our property, could create a tripping hazard liability and ongoing maintenance concerns. And this design doesn't appear to be very common in our area. We've driven by and haven't been able to kind of see where this has been done in other communities. We were told that this project was not fully planned and that they're addressing each unique needs in the field as they arise. And as a result, this is the only option that's been presented to us. And because we recently just moved into the residence, we moved in at the beginning of May, and we're just learning of these plans yesterday, we're asking what type of process might be available to us to consider alternative solutions so that we could engage any relevant professionals to offer other solutions that could avoid installing this concrete curbing and maybe allow for a better outcome. And we just want to conclude by saying we're not against having the sidewalk installed, and as long-term residents, we certainly want to participate, and we are in support of bettering the community. We're just simply concerned that the best design hasn't been thought out, and we're asking for more time, or what does that look like for us?
Yeah, we can definitely have staff get with you, and you know, we don't have visuals on this, and we don't get into the day-to-day, but we definitely want our citizens heard. So I'm sure Mr. Dunning's going to have somebody visit with you and set something up. Yeah. Thanks for coming tonight. All right. I don't have any other public comments. Ms. Fowler or Curry?
I've not received any additional.
All right. Then we will take a break. Let's make it a full 15 minutes this time. See you in 15 and 2. Welcome back, everyone. I am so sorry. We took a lot more than 15 minutes. I apologize. But we needed that break after that long push. So we're back to business, and we will have Councilmember Shields read every single item so we can get through the night quicker. I know you will. You're a trooper. First one, though, needs to be read by our city clerk. Would you please read, Ms. Feller-Curry, resolution number 2314?
And I feel like I have pressure on me to be as good as Councilmember Shields.
Yeah, it's tough. It's pressure.
Resolution number 2314, a resolution adopting FY 2024, FY 2028 capital improvement plan.
Thank you. We have a motion to adopt Resolution 2314, resolution for the 2024 CIP Capital Improvement Plan. By Councilmember Shields, she has motioned to adopt. Councilmember Edson has seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, please cast your vote. All votes are in. Please record the vote. And the resolution is adopted. Thank you. Could you also read resolution number 2315?
Resolution number 23-15, a resolution authorizing the mayor to appoint successor directors to the Chapel Ridge Community Improvement District.
Thank you. We have a motion to adopt resolution 2315 by Councilmember Shields, seconded by Councilmember Hodges. Discussion? Seeing none, please cast your vote. All votes are in. Please record the vote. Passes unanimously. Thank you. And one more, please. Ms. Fowler-Curry, resolution number 2316.
Resolution number 23-16, a resolution authorizing the mayor to appoint successor directors to the Ritter Plaza Community Improvement District.
Thank you. We have a motion to adopt resolution 2316 by Councilmember Pryor, seconded by Councilmember Hodges. Discussion? Seeing none, please cast your vote. All votes are in. Please record the vote. And that resolution is also adopted. Thank you. That takes us to proposed ordinance's first reading. Councilmember Pryor, would you please read bill number 23-110?
Thank you, Mayor. I move to advance to a second reading, bill number 23-110, an ordinance vacating certain easements located at 1901 Southwest River Run Road in the city of Lee Summit, Missouri.
Thank you. We have a motion to advance to second reading, bill number 23-110 by Councilmember Pryor, seconded by Councilmember Hodges. Discussion? Seeing none, please cast your vote. All votes are in. Please record the vote. Passes 9-0. Councilmember Pryor, would you please? Oh, I'm sorry. This is just moving to second reading. We're not doing adoption on those. That's right. Then how about this? Councilmember Felker, would you please read bill number 23-111?
Mayor, I move to advance to second reading bill number 23-111, an ordinance vacating certain easements located at 800 Northwest Ward Road in the city of Lee Summit, Missouri.
Thank you. We have a motion to move to second reading, bill number 23-111 by Councilmember Felker, seconded by Councilmember Edson. Discussion? Seeing none, please cast your vote. All votes are in. Please record the vote. Passes unanimously. Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Lopez, would you please read bill number 23-112?
Yes, thanks, Mayor. I move to advance the second reading bill number 23-112, an ordinance accepting final plat entitled Lumberman's Row, lots 1 through 18, and tracts A through C as a subdivision to the city of Lee Summit, Missouri.
Thank you. We have a motion to advance second reading, bill number 23-112 by Mayor Pro Tem Lopez, seconded by Councilmember Felker. Discussion? Seeing none, please cast your vote. All votes are in. Please record the vote. Does move to second reading unanimously. Thank you. Councilmember Edson, would you please read bill number 23-113?
Thank you, Mayor. I move to advance to second reading bill number 23-113, an ordinance accepting final plat entitled The Falls at Winterset, first plat, lots 1500 through 1519, and tracts A and B as a subdivision to the city of Lee Summit, Missouri.
Thank you. We have a motion to move to second reading, bill number 23-113 by Councilmember Edson, seconded by Councilmember DeMoro. Discussion? Seeing none, please cast your vote. All votes are in. Please record the vote. Passes 9-0. Thank you. Councilmember DeMoro, would you please read bill number 23-114?
Thank you, Mayor. I move to advance the second reading, Bill number 23-114, an ordinance accepting final plat entitled Town Center Logistics, Lot 1 and Track A as subdivision to the city of Lee Summit, Missouri.
Thank you. We have a motion to move to second reading, Bill number 23-114 by Councilmember DeMoro, seconded by Councilmember Hodges. Discussion? Seeing none, please cast your vote. All votes are in. Please record the vote. Passes 9-0. Thank you. Councilmember Shields, would you please read Bill number 23-115?
Thank you, Mayor. I move for second reading of Bill number 23-115, an ordinance determining and declaring the necessity of acquiring for public use certain right-of-way permanent easements and temporary construction easements for road, water, stormwater, and additional pedestrian amenities associated with the proposed Third Street improvements from Blue Parkway to Jefferson Street project, authorizing the city manager and his designees to negotiate for the purposes of acquiring the necessary interest in land, and authorizing the city attorney and his designees to institute condemnation proceedings if such interest in land cannot be acquired by purchase through good faith negotiations.
Thank you. We have a motion to move to second reading, Bill number 23-115 by Councilmember Shields, seconded by Councilmember Edson. Discussion? Yes, Councilmember Felker.
Mayor, just to note that I'll be recusing myself on this one due to a conflict of interest.
Thank you, sir. All right, seeing no further discussion, please, Councilmember Pryor.
Thank you, Mayor. So I feel like I just wanted to say, this one's hard for me to vote on. I have had people reach out to me and they have retained counsel, so I've been unable to communicate with them. But I feel like I'm in a position where I've only been able to hear essentially one side of the story and not their side of the story. So this one is a tough one for me to vote on. So I just wanted to voice that. Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you. Okay, there we go. Seeing no further discussion, please cast your vote. All votes are in. Please record the vote. Passes 8-0. Thank you. And one recusal. That takes us to committee reports. Yes, Councilmember Edson.
Thank you, Mayor. We have CEDC next Wednesday, June 14th, here at 5 p.m. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Council comments? Yes, Councilmember Pryor.
Thank you, Mayor. A couple of things. I know that whenever I was watching the Planning Commission meeting, Mark Kitchen spoke about the litter pickup and everything and how well it's going. But I was wondering, like, what can we put in place to keep, I mean, we can be angry at MoDOT, we can be angry at the city of Lee Summit, we can be angry at a lot of people, but ultimately the anger, in my opinion, should fall on the people throwing all the trash out on the streets. So do we have a plan in place, or can we like start fining people? Like, what plan in place do we have going forward?
Right now, we have a compilation of multi-discipline, we call it the city's clean team, to pull together thoughts and ideas around awareness, around enforcement, and things of that nature, staff team to bring forward recommendations. So that's in place right now. They're developing those types of recommendations. Everything from, yes, littering, even at different levels of littering, right? And what to do about that. So there's things in motion that I would anticipate will be forthcoming.
Good to know. Thank you so much. And then my other question is I know I spoke about it a little bit last meeting, so 3 weeks ago, I guess, but just along 3rd Street, the burying of the utilities, is that something I should bring up during like Public Works? Or when would be the best time to bring that up?
Mr. Park looks like he's headed this way.
My understanding, Mayor Pro Tem assigned that to Public Works Committee, and working with Public Works Chairman DeMoro, we are likely to schedule some initial introduction of that topic at the upcoming meeting this month.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Lovell.
Thanks, Mayor. I just want to address, and this happened I think, right after we went on break, but the recent shooting that was at Lima Keegan Park, and a couple of things. Number one is a number of my constituents reaching out to me, asking questions. The first thing I thought of is, number one, what are we doing to follow what Jackson County is doing to prosecute the perpetrators there and making sure that our police officers are being supported prosecutorially properly, and if there is anything that we do. And number two is, what could we do as a city? I know it happened at a park, but just trying to get some clarity on those things, and maybe if there is a way for us to make sure that these violent criminals are being prosecuted and that we're paying attention to that. And not that there's much that we could do, but just something that is weighing on me and seems to be a more recurring frequent. So just wanted to bring that up if there's anybody that might want to address or comment on that. Thanks.
Thank you. Yeah, Chief, if you don't mind, just have a conversation.
Mayor, members of council, Travis Forbes, the Chief of Police. I will say the investigators have worked very diligently on that crime that occurred and have identified 15 individuals who are involved in that incident and are in discussions with the prosecutor, who I will say the Eastern Jackson County Prosecutor's Office has been very supportive of charging those individuals responsible to make sure this doesn't happen again with them. Obviously, unattended juveniles is a big issue that we're dealing with, not just us. I speak with other chiefs in the metro area, and it's an issue in every city. So that's what happened in this occasion. It was pretty significant crime, and luckily we had a lot of it on video that captured a lot of evidence that was very helpful to help us move towards solving that issue. Does that help out? Any further questions?
Okay.
Thank you.
Mr. Snook, yeah, please.
And Joe Snook, Administrator, Parks Department, I'll add, in conjunction after the event, our staff met with staff from the police department, and we looked at ways that we could maybe help mitigate that in the future. One thing that we have recently added is private security that is patrolling our parks at certain evenings and at certain times to help be a kind of an extra set of eyes on a regular basis. So that is in place right now. We'll test it out, see if we need to add nights, if there's an opportunity to reduce the amount of nights over time, but that is something that's in place at this time also.
Thank you. Councilmember Pryor?
Thank you. I was just wondering, who pays for the private security? Is that Lisa Parks, or is that the city, or where does that money come from?
The Parks Department is paying for that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. All right. This is budget month, so staff has a lot on their plate. Council members have a lot on their plate. Just want to give you a heads up that it's going to be close on a few things. So we plan to have 2 more meetings this month, but we have that last Tuesday if we need it. I know I don't want to do it, but if it's necessary, if we have to, I just want you to know that it's possible. Staff's going to do everything they can to make sure we get it done, but there's been some things outside the control of finance and budget. It's not finance and budget committee's fault. It's not staff's fault. It's some circumstances that legal told me about that is like going to slow some information that would come through finance and budget. So anyway, I just wanted to let you all know that. And then probably have well, I'll just leave it at that right now. I can't say any further comment, but with that, I will turn it over to staff roundtable.
Just a quick update. It's been a few weeks, but we've been talking about the agreement, amendments to the agreement with the Paragon Star Project.
I'm sorry, hold on, Mr. Dunning.
Yes. a certain button got pushed.
He was, no, it was Councilmember Felker trying to kick me underneath the dais. All right. So let's start over, sir. Start all the way over because I have no idea what you started saying.
Sure. It's been a while since we met, but there was, we had a lot of dialogue about amending the development agreements with Paragon Star, and I'll report that all those conditions have been met. The securities for the infrastructure, for the sports complex completion, the water line completion, and Kansas City, Missouri infrastructure substantial completion, all those have been met. And the temporary certificate of occupancy for a portion of the sports complex has been issued. And then from here moving forward, then as some of those additional parking improvements get done, that opens up additional capacity for further field opening as they complete that sports complex. So that's the latest on that. I thought it'd be helpful to share with the council kind of where things are at with that.
Very good. It was really a busy week, if you think about just the emails going around and everything. Thank you to staff for getting us, information so we know what's going on, and we'll push through this big month, and we'll have a big July too. So we'll be talking about EDC in July. So we'll have that on July 18th. That's the date that we've got it scheduled. So. I'm trying to get all that organized with Mr. Elam and Mr. Dunning, and trying to keep that night clear of other topics so we can focus. And it's going to be it'll be a good meeting. I think it's coming together really well as far as how to structure it and make sure that we're having good discussions. With that said, I'm going to adjourn this meeting at 8:55.